Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier at Ford, CEO Jim Farley dropped some news that really shocks the entire car market. The last few months at Ford have been full of huge wins.
Heck yeah!
But also a lot of major fails. People who are Mustang fans aren't really flocking to the sales floor to buy it. This massive screen just looks kind of weird. So today we're going to talk about everything Ford has done over the past few months to get rid of their overflowing truck inventory, how some recent changes to the Ford Mustang almost entirely killed it, why these Ford Broncos are just sitting on lots for months, just getting covered completely in dust, and what Ford plans to do in 2025 to try and fix everything that went wrong over the past few years. Now, first off, we have to start with, obviously, Ford's cash cow, the Ford F-150. And the Ford F-150 has really had an interesting, I'd say, past 4 years, because 2020, 2021, and some of 2022, they're actually struggling with chip shortages and slow production. They couldn't get a lot of parts to build these trucks, and that eventually led to very, very low inventory, and it was really hard to find F-150s like you see now, just filling up lots, and not just one row, but another row here, all the way down to there, another row all the way across here, and then continuing through here, an entire other row. And so for a few years there, it was so hard to get an F-150, and basically every truck was getting marked up. Now, what happened when all these trucks were getting marked up and Ford, the actual company, not the dealerships, weren't getting any of that extra money? Well, they thought it would be a good idea that, hey, let's start marking up our prices. And so instead of the dealer getting all of the extra money, Ford as a company would also get extra money by just saying, oh, we need to go up with prices just because. But we all know Ford was just kind of jealous that the dealers were getting an extra 5 to 10K on every truck, and they just wanted a piece of the action. That's just my conspiracy theory here. So at the end of the day, Ford kept marking up their vehicles, they kept increasing prices, and over the past few years, that really led to slow sales, and sales didn't really pick up until probably the end of last year, and that's where I want to kind of get to a point on the F-150 here. These dealership lots have just been full of F-150s pretty much as far as the eye can see for basically the past couple of years now, and I'd say really this past year, going back 12 months, they were totally overloaded with trucks and they were really selling slow. And so Ford and dealerships, because of these increase in prices and higher interest rates, really had to take drastic measures to finally start getting rid of some of this excess inventory. About halfway through 2023, they started giving $5,000 discounts on trucks, and that helped a little bit. But in 2024, they still had an excess amount of inventory of the F-150. So about halfway through last year, dealerships had so much inventory that they were giving $5,000, $10,000, sometimes $12,000, $13,000 in discounts on the F-150s just to get rid of them. And they also had like financing from Ford Credit, I think as low as like 1.9 to 2.9%. And that finally got people to buy these trucks, because what happened after they lowered prices, shocker, Ford had the highest number of F-150 sales in the last quarter of 2024 that they've had. And it obviously shouldn't be a shock that once you lower prices and give people better deals and come down on interest rates, that vehicles like the F-150 actually start selling again. Now here's the thing though, they're still not selling as fast as they were post 2020. We're halfway through January of 2025, and obviously there's still quite a bit of inventory here. Like I said, there's an entire row over here, there's this row, there's this entire row filling it up right here, and this other row on my left side here as well. And most of these that I looked at are still 2024 models, and the salespeople inside said they're just now starting to get 2025s trickling in. But despite there being a lot of sales in the last quarter, they still have a lot of 2024 inventory that they need to get rid of. And how long that will take, probably my best guess is tax time in April. So I'm just predicting that a lot of these 2024s are still going to be on lots until tax time. Now, moving on from the F-150, there's one truck that is sitting on Ford lots for a while that I thought would just be like flying off the shelf. And that is the Ford Ranger, because everyone likes the Ford Ranger. If you say you don't like the Ford Ranger, you're probably lying. Everyone likes the Ford Ranger. And especially this new design, I think is probably the best looking Ranger that Ford has ever come out with. And some of the lower trim levels actually are not that bad of a price. Now, they're more than you think a Ranger would be, But in 2025, it's hard out here, guys. You know what I mean. So like, here's an example. Here's a 4x4 Ford Ranger, and it's one of the lower trim levels. It is, as you can see, an STX. And it does have cloth seats, but it has a full screen, and the price is $39,170. But there are lower trim levels on the Ranger that do start out cheaper, obviously not four-wheel drive. You can actually get a Ranger around like 30 something grand. But right here at this dealership, because I live here in Idaho, most of these trucks that you see here are going to be four-wheel drive versions, which are a few $1,000s more than if you bought like a two-wheel drive STX. So I would knock off about 5 grand or so off of the price of one of these STXs if you're getting two-wheel drive. So they do come down a little bit, but I am surprised that they still have 2024 models of the Rangers sitting on this dealer lot. You know, I thought they'd be selling pretty quick because of their price point, but I think that goes to show you the first part of the year, everyone spent all their money on Christmas stuff, New Year's rolls around. There's not a lot of extra money to throw around on a new vehicle in January, and people are just waiting, and these Rangers just sitting here are a little bit more proof of that. Now, as I walk across this Ford lot, we've got to go to the next Ford vehicle that I really want to talk about. And this one's very important because it's a vehicle that I thought you would never ever see an overloaded amount of inventory just sitting on the lot. I thought this would always be a little bit hard to find and they would just always go quickly because it is a cool vehicle, and that is the Ford Bronco. I never thought I would see the day where you would have an entire row of Ford Broncos just sitting on the lot, covered in dust. Look at all this dust here. These have been sitting for a while, especially this black one, you can see it. And look at that, so much dust. And don't worry, it didn't scratch the paint for you crazy people out there. But we haven't had any rain or snow in the city in probably 2 weeks now, so the fact that these are still covered in dust means they've been sitting here quite a while. So when the Bronco first came out, it was almost impossible to find any of these sitting on the lot, and most of these Broncos were being marked up like 10, 15, some of them even $20,000. And even at those kind of crazy markups, when they were first released, there were some people that just didn't care, paid the markup, because they wanted to be the first to have a Bronco. But now that they've been out for a while and people have had time to play around with them, and Ford's been getting more parts to be able to build them, people are realizing it's just not as good as a Jeep. I just had to say that because I have a Jeep. But in all seriousness, the prices of the Broncos have just kind of gone a little bit insane. As an example, this red one here, that is like a higher trim level Badlands, gets a little bit crazy in price. And right now at this dealership, I don't see any discounts. And you can't really read the sticker, but I'll read it off to you. It's $67,000 for a Badlands. That's almost $70,000 for a higher trim level Bronco. So obviously price is a factor in these sitting here. And for most people, it's not like their everyday driver, and it's one of their just kind of more fun vehicles. And another Ford SUV that has been kind of just sitting on lots for a while and selling really, really slowly is the Ford Expedition, because these are even more expensive than those Broncos. And you don't have to spend $67,000 to get into a Bronco. You can buy one of these Outer Banks models, and this one here is $55,000, and the base model goes even lower than that. And obviously they do have the Raptor, and that's like 100 grand, so we won't even count that. That's a special vehicle. But I have seen those even marked down as well. But again, back to the Ford Expedition, I do like this green color. I think the green is really kind of awesome, and it just gets rid of all the boring black and silver that you kind of see everywhere. So sometimes you got to be different, people. But this is where the Expedition gets a little bit crazy. It's a 2024 XLT 4x4, their EcoBoost V6 and 10-speed, which is in just about everything now. But this thing is $73,630, and I actually don't see any kind of discount in the window. And again, these are also just covered in massive amounts of dust as well. But this one actually looks like it's been washed. Oh no, the green just hides the dust. It's still dusty. They're all dusty. Oh, here's one with a discount, actually. And that's because the MSRP of this one is a little bit silly. This is a LTD Stealth 4x4. And you can read here, I won't go into all the details, but it's $83,560. Actually never thought I would see an Expedition at $83,000. But they do have a discount on this one of over $7,000. As you can see here, bringing it down to $75,829. So there are some discounts on these Expeditions that are 2024 models, but so far that's the only one I see that has the discount. Now I want to take a quick side note and jump over here to the Ford Maverick real quick. This is kind of a similar situation as the Bronco was in. When the Maverick came out, you couldn't hardly find any on the lots, and again, the ones that were on the lot a lot of times had markups. And the disappointing thing about marking up a Maverick, and here's a good example of a point that I want to make. This right here is an XLT, and it's $33,185, and that's pretty much one of the cheapest pickup trucks that you can buy. Granted, it's not a body on frame, but still a little truck that is quite useful. But when you take a $33,000 truck and you slap 5K, 10K of markup on it, buying a Maverick doesn't make sense anymore. So that led to slow sales for the Maverick for a while, because it's just dumb to pay over on a $33,000 truck. It was meant to be cheap, and it should be cheap. But now that a little bit of time has gone by, as you can see here, there's actually plenty of inventory of Mavericks to choose from. And when they first came out, you couldn't find them anywhere, and it was impossible. But now any Ford dealership you go to is going to have a handful of Mavericks on the lot. And this one actually has the most I've ever seen so far. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Mavericks on this row. And now if you want to buy a cheap truck and you don't need something giant like an F-150, you now have some good options in the Maverick. Now we got to transition out of the trucks, out of the SUVs, and talk about something in America that I never thought would ever happen in my lifetime or any lifetime of anyone in history of the car world whatsoever. And the car we need to talk about is the new Ford Mustang. And that's because this new Ford Mustang just had the absolute worst sales year of the Ford Mustang in all of the history of Mustang. Yes, I'm even talking about back in the 60s when the original Mustangs came out. This new Mustang just sold worse than that. And actually, the sales of this Mustang were so bad that the Mach-E even had more sales than the new Mustang. In 2024, the Ford Mustang just had 44,000 buyers, making it the worst sales year in Mustang history. And so that dip is so bad that obviously the Mustang Mach-E, like I said, surpassed it in sales by a whopping 7,000 units more. So the Mustang Mach-E sold 7,000 more units than this new Ford Mustang did. And this kind of isn't just a one-off thing that happened last year out of nowhere. Mustang sales have been on a steady decline for years, except for 2023 when the numbers were up slightly. Previously, the worst sales year on record was 2022 with 47,566 units sold. And if you take a look at this past year's numbers, it takes a very sharp decline, falling a whopping 43% in Q4 compared to the previous year. Now, there are a few reasons why I think the Mustang is pretty much having a really hard time selling. And one of those reasons is the price. This is the most expensive Mustang that Ford has ever made, and the price has gone up astronomically from the previous generation of the Mustang. And now I get it, it's a new updated design and there's a lot more tech in it and things like that. But a lot of this new tech shouldn't justify the increase in price. And as far as price goes, I have a couple examples to show you while we're here standing on this lot. This right here is the EcoBoost Mustang, and most of them start at $33,000 with like the very, very base with no options. But most people are gonna add a couple of things. And here's an example right here. This is the EcoBoost right here. This build here is $41,985. So they had about $4,000 in options on this car. But even the EcoBoost being a lower price is still struggling. And as you can see here, there's a $2,745 discount off of the MSRP, bringing it to $39,240. So the EcoBoosts are sitting on the lot. But what about a higher trim level GT? For example, this white GT right here. The GTs actually start about $2,600 more than the previous model, which is not much, but honestly, they probably could have just jumped it up like $500 to $1,000 and called it a day. But obviously, like the EcoBoost over there, they're gonna have some options that bring the price up. So this GT has a base price of $46,480, but around $7,600 in options, bringing the price to $55,685. And at $55,000, I think that's where a lot of Mustang fans are really struggling to purchase these cars. And with interest rates still, again, pretty high, it doesn't make sense. And Ford's really not doing as many deals on the Mustangs as they are with the F-150s because they just have so many of those. Now here's one of the biggest problems with the Mustang and a lot of CEOs. They're pretty much out of touch with their customer base, and here's why. Ford CEO said that despite Mustang sales being low, the Ford Mustang is actually priced right. Now Ford's CEO may not think that pricing is a problem, but in my opinion, pricing is. And now that leads me to the second reason why I think these new Mustangs are having a little bit hard time selling. And it's not the looks, because they do look good. Now, some of it is controversial, and a lot of the controversial stuff has to do with the rear end. And kind of these angles here, a lot of people aren't really sold on the rear end. They think it looks a bit Kia-ish right here, but other than that, everyone likes it. But what I want to talk about is inside. And one of the things that I think is controversial and why a lot of people who are Mustang fans aren't really flocking to the sales floor to buy it is this right here, this massive screen that Ford is now using in this car. Because it's not the rest of the interior. You know, there's nice kind of fake carbon fiber trim here, some good leather, you know, everything looks really, really nice in Mustang. But then you go to the dash and it just looks kind of weird. Pretty much every Mustang year had kind of the double humps, you know, the hump here with the gauge cluster back inside of it, and then an empty space here with the flat part of the dash, and then another hump here. And now Ford has changed that. They got rid of the double hump, which has been in the Mustang forever, that people just love so much, and replaced it with a giant stupid screen that sticks up over the top of the dash. And in my opinion, this move to all these screens is not great. In some cars, maybe it works, but not in a Ford Mustang. Everything else on the dash and the interior, honestly, is totally fine. But they cut out one big thing that was a Mustang tradition forever. So with all that said, we're now getting into 2025, and what does 2025 look like for Ford? Well, first of all, the Ford Escape is pretty much dead. This will be the last year of the Ford Escape, and that's because the Ford Escape is pretty much being replaced by the Ford Bronco Sport. It doesn't make sense to have a Ford Bronco Sport and a Ford Escape around the same prices when the Bronco Sport is just selling a lot better. And in my opinion, this is just a better looking vehicle and more useful for the day-to-day stuff than this Ford Escape right here. But moving on to the trucks, obviously Ford is going to keep continuing to sell their Super Duties. It's a big staple in a lot of markets in the South and in the West where a lot of big trucks are needed. People have ranches, people have to tow a lot of stuff. A lot of people travel around the country out here in the West. And so the Super Duties are never going to go away. But I guarantee you every year, they're still going to continue getting more and more expensive. And the only way they're going to sell them, just like the Ford F-150, is they're going to have to discount them like crazy most of the time. And as far as the F-150 goes, in 2025, we already know what all the MSRPs are going to be. We already know the new trim levels. But before they sell any 2025 model F-150s, they're going to have to obviously get rid of the 2024s that are still here on the lots. And I think, in my opinion, it might be till April, May before we see all of these 2024 models gone. As far as the Mustang goes for 2025, pretty sure sales are still going to be a bit slow. We're coming into the second year of this new design, and I think they'll probably have a better year for the Mustang in 2025 than they did in 2024. But I do think the Mach-E is still going to beat it in sales just because it's more of a practical vehicle, and Ford has really good incentives and interest rates on them. But moving on to the Bronco and what I expect for the Bronco in 2025, I was just talking with one of the salesmen here for quite a while actually, and he said that they still have a lot of 2024s to get rid of. As you can see here, again, this giant row, but Ford has so many 2024 models that he thinks it'll take till about summer before Ford sells all of the 24s. And he also said that Ford is not going to push out any 2025 models to dealer lots until all of these 2024 models are sold. So at least halfway through 2025, we're probably going to see 2024 model Broncos still sitting on the lots for a while. And what's going to happen with the Expedition in 2025? I'm not really sure, because there's another full-size SUV that competes with the Expedition that just came out, and I've already filmed a video with that new full-size SUV, and it's coming out really, really soon. So anyways, that's it for kind of an overall picture of Ford's last year of sales and what's going on in 2025. So if you made it this far, make sure you please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button so more people see this information, and I'll see you in the next video.